Imagine this. A 21-year-old college student, Jason Landry, wraps up his finals, rolls a few joints, packs up his PlayStation, and hits the road in SpongeBob socks with his pet fish riding shotgun. It should have been a routine drive home for the holidays. 2.5 hours from San Marcos to Missouri City, Texas. But somewhere, along a dark, winding country road, Jason vanished. No trace of him. Just an abandoned car, a shattered back window and his clothes, laid out neatly on a cold gravel path, like someone undressing before a shower. No blood, no body, nothing.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We want to turn now to the disappearance of 21-year-old Jason Landry, part of our Missing in America series here on Prime. It has been 318 days since the 21-year-old left his college apartment at Texas State University and he headed home for Christmas. But between leaving school and arriving home just outside of Houston, things took a turn. On a long gravel road in Lulling, Texas, Jason's car was found wrecked with the key still in the ignition and the headlights still on. But no sign of Jason. News Nation's Marky Martin spent time with the family last week, and she is joining us live tonight with their story. Marky, each one of these stories heartbreaking. This one bizarre, just vanishing into thin air.
Marnie, it's honestly the best way to put it. There are simply no clues as to where Jason is or what happened to him. His family only knows that he is missing. And while they do believe him to be dead, they also acknowledge that with so little evidence, anything is possible. But the questions do remain. How does a college kid simply disappear on his way home for the holidays? And what happened out on Salt Flat Road?
As I was coming up in my car, I could see tire tracks leading off right here. And you can see the tree where his car hit right there with the cross on it.
At 2 a.m. on December 14th, 2020, Kent Landry awoke to the phone call every parent dreads. Highway Patrol had found his son's car wrecked along this gravel road in central Texas. But Jason wasn't inside. In the dead of night, Landry drove to the crash site. The former defense attorney turned pastor, shocked when he pulled up.
I've been to plenty of crime scenes, and I was expecting police and searchers, and there was no one.
Landry quickly making a startling discovery.
This is his flip-flops.
A pile of his son's clothes.
Socks, shorts.
Some bloody, strewn across the road.
And I could tell that it was Jason's clothes because Jason wears crazy socks, bright yellow SpongeBob, and I knew those socks and I recognized his clothes.
But with temperatures near freezing that night, clothes would have been a lifeline. Three thoughts flooded the father's mind. Why on earth was his son on this road, so far off the main highway? Where was Jason now, and why was no one looking for him?
You cry when you think of your child walking down this stupid dirt road in the middle of nowhere. I wish I'd never heard of Salt Flat Road.
Landry still finding pieces of his son's car as we walked with him down Salt Flat Road 10 months later.
This is part of his car right here.
Still wondering why law enforcement didn't react more urgently.
It's frustrating because we don't have hard answers.
Captain Jeff Ferry is the lead detective on the case. He admits early on things weren't done perfectly.
There is no inventory conducted. I don't know why. That's a Highway Patrol question. The trooper does not go into the vehicle. I don't know why. That's a Highway Patrol question. The trooper does not place a hold on the vehicle. I don't know why. That's a Highway Patrol question.
And it's those first hours that haunt Kent Landry to this very day.
You know, the thing as a parent, you visualize your child walking down a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, not knowing anyone, looking for help. And that's the part that hurts. Yeah. So that stays with you.
Eventually, the searchers did come, blanketing nearby woods and farmland, checking every abandoned home and outbuilding for miles. Since Jason's disappearance, there have been 7 large-scale search parties involving hundreds of people. Canine units, horses, drones, and still nothing. Not one confirmed sign of Jason Landry. Just this month, people trained with Texas Search and Rescue fanned out, using artificial intelligence and nearly a year's worth of drone images to check 86 points of interest, 86 places where the computers thought Jason might be. They did find bones, but none of them human.
There's no definitive information proving one thing or disproving another. And the things that we do feel extremely confident in, people don't like those.
Detective Ferry says he has absolutely no evidence a crime occurred, no evidence someone else was involved, and no evidence anyone harmed or kidnapped Jason.
We've heard drug cartel theories. We've heard alien. There's just nothing that takes us in any direction outside of here.
But the family isn't sold.
We just don't have enough to know, so I don't like to think there was a criminal, but then I don't like to think he was just wandering off and something happened either.
Jason's mom, Lisa, doesn't often talk publicly about the case. She says she often imagines her son walking through the door or getting a phone call with answers.
I guess I don't expect a phone call from him, but sometimes I do imagine him coming home. So, who knows? I think it's just more for a way for me to have him close by.
A mother's intuition telling Lisa she'll one day have the answers she needs for peace. But until then, the couple leaning on each other and their faith to guide them through the unknown. Every now and then, Kent returning to Salt Flat Road alone to search for his lost son.
As a dad, that's the hard part. Because you spend your life trying to take care of your kids, and then you can't. That stays with you. I hate crying.
It's just gut-wrenching. The family telling me in the past couple weeks they're preparing for a tough holiday season ahead. In fact, just last week I went into Jason's childhood bedroom, and his Christmas presents from last year are still there wrapped just in case he comes home. Now, the family and friends have put up a $10,000 reward to any information leading to Jason's safe return or his body. Marnie.
What started as a strange but solvable case quickly spiraled into one of Texas's most haunting and baffling cold cases. And the deeper people dug, local cops, expert criminologists, even moms with Facebook groups, the stranger it all got. There were mysterious Facebook personas, wild theories about wild hogs, secret extractions, and law enforcement missteps that only added fuel to the fire. Was Jason high and lost in a mental haze? Or was he the victim of a crime that got buried, literally, in the rugged backcountry of Luling? In this story, we're not just following a missing persons case. We're stepping into an obsessive web of digital detectives, forensic doubts, and one small town's complicated shadows. This is the disappearance of Jason Landry, equal parts mystery, tragedy, and psychological spiral. And if you think you know where this is going, you don't. Chapter 1. The deeper you go, the stranger it gets. The day before Jason Landry would vanish without a trace in the Texas countryside on a cold night, without clothes, and for reasons that still leave investigators scratching their heads, he was thinking about socks. Not just any socks. He had a thing for quirky ones. One pair on his Christmas list had a monkey in a suit, carrying a briefcase and a banana, with monkey business stitched around the ankles. He texted the list to his mom. Clear instructions, fun and wacky socks only. None of the typical taco or dog designs. Jason was 21, goofy, and always smiling. The kind of guy who didn't follow rules or make plans. His siblings were more structured, but Jason marched to the beat of his own drum. He started off college as a clean-cut kid from the suburbs near Houston. But after transferring to Texas State, he leaned into a more relaxed lifestyle, growing out his hair, ditching button-downs for tie-dye hoodies, and for a while, in not caring too much about grades. It took time, but by junior year, he was getting it together. Things were looking up. What no one saw coming was the toll isolation would take on him. That semester of remote learning during the pandemic hit hard. Jason, an extrovert who thrived on connection, was suddenly locked in a quiet apartment with no social interaction. It was a kind of quiet that slowly got to him. He started smoking more, staying in, and drifting away from reality. His dad, a pastor, later said the isolation felt like solitary confinement. Jason was just trying to cope however he could. In the days leading up to his disappearance, Jason was clearly in a strange headspace. He ordered fast food, filmed close-ups of weed, and posted videos talking about turning his life around. He messaged friends about finding spiritual clarity through drugs. Looking back, it seems like he was avoiding sleep and meals to chase some kind of high. His childhood friend Jack started noticing something wasn't right. Jason's texts were getting harder to follow, full of wild, spiritual, and futuristic ideas, all mashed together. He'd also gotten into psychedelic documentaries and was fascinated by mystical experiences, talking about reaching enlightenment, meditating to the point of levitating, or becoming a statue like a monk. His thoughts were intense. But if you asked his family, they'd tell you he still seemed like himself. They spoke with him that weekend, and he was talkative, upbeat, and excited about next semester. Typical Jason. On Sunday night, Jason spent nearly an hour on FaceTime with a friend. There's no audio, but in the video, he looks engaged and chatty, rolling joints while he talked. Later that night, he decided to head home. He packed some toiletries, his PlayStation, laptop, a few joints tucked inside a pill bottle, and even brought along his pet fish, Sparky, in a cup. Despite the drop in temperature and strong winds, he was dressed for warmer weather. Shorts, sandals, a t-shirt, and those SpongeBob socks he loved. Around 11 p.m., he hit the road in his tan 2003 Nissan Altima, plugged his hometown into Waze, and started the 2.5-hour drive. Within 10 minutes, he was already in Caldwell County, heading down Highway 80 toward Luling. He kept up with friends via FaceTime and Snapchat during the drive. Finals were over. He'd clocked out of work for the semester. He seemed to be in good spirits, physically okay, and probably noticed the meteor shower lighting up the night sky. Out in the country, it would have looked spectacular. Whether he looked up or not, we don't know. But something changed. When he reached Luling at 11:24 p.m., he turned off Waze and didn't take the route home. Instead, he drove straight into unfamiliar territory, continuing for several blocks until the road curved left and turned into Salt Flat Road. It was the opposite direction of where he should have been heading. He drove another 5 miles down that road. At 11:28 p.m., he sent a selfie to his ex, calm, confident, like nothing was wrong. No one would hear from him again. When I first learned about Jason Landry, nearly 3 years had passed since he disappeared. I was in an office at Texas State where I'd been invited to speak to students about another case. The room had a map of Jack the Ripper's murders pinned on the wall, fitting, given what was to come. The professor, Kim Rosmo, had invited me. He's one of the top criminologists out there and had worked on some big cases. We were talking about internet conspiracy theories when Jason's name came up. Rosmo had seen firsthand how social media can warp investigations. He'd been studying the effects of viral hysteria on real cases, and Jason's story had somehow become one of them. Despite being a small-town case, the energy online was intense. Groups arguing over theories, turning speculation into fact, and sometimes even going after investigations. Rosmo had experienced that kind of heat before, but this case had a different kind of pull. Jason's disappearance wasn't just a mystery. It had all the elements of something bigger. There were strange clues, dead ends, and a story that seemed to take over the lives of those who followed it, like a haunted house that slowly messes with your head. This case drew people in and kept them there. Over time, casual interest turned into full-blown obsession. The online activity surrounding Jason's case is huge. Dozens of Facebook groups with tens of thousands of followers track every update, dissect every photo, every timeline. For many, it's like a real-life crime puzzle. But it's not all internet theorists. There are parents, volunteers, and people who genuinely care about what happened to this kid. They've never even met. One of them is Cindy Lay, a mom from Texas, who now spends her free time scouring rural land for clues. She got involved early on and never let go. Jason, to her, isn't just a case. He's a mission, and she's not alone. Jim West, a tech guy from Houston, leads a search team and has spent over 50 grand of his own money trying to solve the mystery. When you ask what he thinks happened, he doesn't give you a theory as much as a vibe. To him, It feels like something otherworldly happened. Like Jason was here 1 second, and then gone. The deeper you go, the stranger it gets. Chapter 2. What should we do besides pray? Salt Flat Road is the kind of place that lives on in local stories. A cracked, winding stretch that starts off paved in downtown Luling, then breaks into gravel and snakes past oil fields and ranch land. At night, it becomes something else. Isolated, eerie, and, according to locals, the go-to path for people trying to stay out of sight. Whether it's a joyride gone wrong, or someone trying to dodge cops, abandoned cars are just part of the scenery out here. The road is so remote that when a vehicle appears out of place, it feels like stumbling across a shipwreck. Maybe a rancher hit a pothole, or an oil worker clipped a fence. So when someone noticed a car stuck against a tree around 12:30 a.m., it didn't raise many eyebrows at first. The Nissan Altima's rear window was smashed, its front end beat up, but the airbag hadn't gone off. The headlights were still glowing, keys still in the ignition. The first to report the car was a volunteer firefighter. Soon after, police showed up. One officer guessed the driver had climbed out the back and run off. But later, investigators figured he'd probably squeezed out the front door, barely missing a barbed wire fence. To the cops, it looked like the kind of wreck that happens when some college kid takes a wrong turn. That changed when they found the backpack. Almost 1,000 feet from the car, it was just sitting there. Inside was Jason's wallet, his laptop, even a stash of weed. His toiletries were in a plastic bag, and his pet fish, Sparky, was in a tumbler on the ground nearby, already dead. Then came the clothing, neatly arranged in the middle of the road, almost like someone had slowly undressed and left it there. A red summer camp shirt, black Nike shorts, socks, sandals. Even his watch was laid out, face up, like he was getting ready for bed. It wasn't just weird, it was alarming. Running from a crash is one thing, but doing it barefoot and totally naked in the middle of a freezing night? The officers reached Jason's parents back home in Missouri City, waking them up with the news that the car had been found, but Jason was missing. They mentioned finding drugs in the bag and said he may have stripped due to the cold, or whatever was in his system. The weather that night was brutal, with temps dipping into the 30s. Jason had walked into that darkness, with nothing to protect him. Kent, Jason's dad, couldn't sit still. He got in the car and raced toward Luling, convinced his son was out there, maybe shivering, but still alive. He brought extra clothes, a blanket. But when he arrived near dawn, the reality hit him like a wall. Jason was gone. The car was already towed. No police tape, no search team, just him, alone, trying to make sense of it all. He called the officer back and was told the trooper had gone home to bed. So Kent did what any desperate parent might do. He started filming the crash site, capturing every detail, the tire tracks, the layout of Jason's things. Then he saw the socks, yellow and light blue SpongeBob ones. That was Jason's style. There was no denying it. Later, Kent checked the car at the impound lot. Jason's phone was still wedged between the seat and console. A vital clue untouched. Kent was starting to understand that the most important hours of this case, those first few, had already slipped away. To him, it felt like police had written Jason off. Maybe they thought he was just another kid who partied too hard and wandered off. Kent didn't see it that way. His son may have been high or confused, but he was still someone's child. Scared, alone, and out in the cold. And that should have been enough to trigger an immediate response. Eventually, the gears of the search effort started to turn. Jason's roommate confirmed he hadn't come home. Police checked his apartment. Nothing. That same day, Texas Search and Rescue got involved. EquiSearch followed soon after, both groups launching full-scale searches. Dogs were brought in. Volunteers searched on foot, on horseback, and in ATVs. Oil tanks were checked. Shacks and barns, too. Jason's photo was everywhere. Searchers even walked through icy creeks and flew drones over 30,000 acres of rough terrain. Helicopters scanned from above. Still, nothing. Jason's dad stayed close, doing what he could while his world turned upside down. His older son Kyle joined him. A county judge let them crash in an RV near the crash site. Lisa, Jason's mom, stayed nearby in a hotel with family. Everyone hoped, prayed, waited. As the days wore on, Kent turned to faith to stay grounded. He told reporters about God's grace, about the importance of forgiveness. Jason's disappearance, and he believed, wasn't meaningless. If nothing else, it was a chance to speak from the heart. By Wednesday, attention zeroed in on a nearby pond, just over half a mile from the crash. Several dogs signaled something was there. Sonar picked up a possible object. Divers came in but found nothing. Still, the signs were strong enough that rescuers decided to drain the whole pond. They truly believed Jason was in that water. The scent dogs were too accurate, the clues too clear. One even yanked its handler directly toward the pond after sniffing Jason's shirt. That kind of behavior usually meant only one thing. One of the rescue leaders, Hunstrider, told Kent it might be hellish to go through, but they had to follow the evidence. Kent listened. From his spot at the crash site, he could hear the pumps running nonstop. It haunted him, picturing his son's body beneath the murky water. Every moment felt like a countdown. He stood on a nearby hill for hours, watching it and waiting, hoping for answers, even if they broke his heart. After days of draining, the pond was just a muddy hole. And still, no Jason. The rescuers couldn't believe it. The dogs had locked in. The pond had felt like a sure thing. For Kent, it was a strange kind of relief. There was still no Jason, but that also meant there was still hope. Chapter 3. There's more to this story. Even after the pond turned up, nothing. Search teams kept going. Dogs continued to signal at various ponds and tanks across the area, leading to more draining missions. Still no Jason. At a certain point, searchers started wondering if something chemical in the environment was messing with the dogs. Some speculated that runoff from the nearby oil production, when mixed with water, might mimic the smell of decomposition. It was a theory without much science behind it, but nobody had a better explanation. That one pond, especially, stuck with the searchers. It should have given them something. The whole case just kept breaking the rules, especially the scent trail, or lack of one. It was like Jason had disappeared from thin air, not just from a crash site. After 9 days of exhaustive searching, the first wave of search and rescue efforts wrapped up. There were a few more sweeps later on, including a follow-up in February. But nothing ever broke the case open. Jason's family was left with questions. That seemed to only get weirder. If he didn't go into that pond, where did he go? Why didn't helicopters with thermal imaging pick up a body? Where was the scent trail? It's all made less and less sense. Eventually, even the local sheriff's department admitted something crucial. They'd left the crash site too early that night. That window of time, the first hours, is often when someone can be saved. And Kent, Jason's dad, couldn't shake the idea that things might have gone differently if help had come sooner. He compared it to the Gabby Petito case, where whole states were combined through to find one missing person. Meanwhile, his son had disappeared in a relatively tiny patch of Texas countryside, and still, nothing. A few things may have complicated Jason's case. He was probably high, and maybe even concussed from the wreck. If his mind wasn't clear, then figuring out where he might have gone becomes way harder. It's one thing to track someone with logic. It's another when the person may not even know what they're doing. One of the search leaders even wondered if the meteor shower that night added another layer. Picture it. You're disoriented, possibly injured, maybe high, and you look up to see meteors streaking across a pitch-black sky. It could have been overwhelming or terrifying, especially for someone already thinking about aliens and spiritual signs. Jason didn't walk into an open field either. This part of Central Texas is brutal terrain. Dense woods, sudden drops, rocky gullies, and barbed wire fences everywhere. The land doesn't let you move easily. And if you're barefoot and freezing, it becomes downright hostile. Luling itself has a reputation. It was once known as the roughest town in Texas, with stories of shootouts and outlaw types drifting through. Oil was discovered here in 1922, and that boom turned it into a place filled with hard living and hard people. Some say not much has changed. Even today, Luling has a gritty undercurrent. Just 6 months before Jason disappeared, 2 teenagers were shot to death, just miles away. The man responsible said he was being chased by aliens. It's a disturbing case, and it adds a chilling layer to the backdrop of Jason's disappearance. Drugs, especially meth, have long been a problem in this region. A few years back, the local sheriff's office made the largest meth bust in county history, hundreds of pounds. The area might look peaceful, but it's seen its share of chaos. Still, Luling has been trying to reinvent himself. It has festivals, coffee shops, and a downtown full of character. Some folks commute to Austin or San Antonio, while others work the land. But behind that charm, there's still a sense that this place holds on to its rough edges. Much of the local economy revolves around oil. That means lots of landowners have wells, and those wells need checking. That's what makes this case even stranger. Jason's car was found in the middle of an oil field, packed with active wells, regularly visited by workers. If he had collapsed or died nearby, odds are someone would have stumbled across him. One landowner, whose family works the field near the crash, is still baffled. There are people on those properties every single day, and not once has anyone found a shred of Jason. Not clothes, not bones, not a clue. For him, that silence is suspicious. He doesn't buy the idea that Jason just wandered off and disappeared. Not out there. Not in a place where boots hit the ground every day. For him, and for many others, there's a lingering feeling that this story still hasn't told us everything. Chapter 4. A Possible Suspect. By early 2021, just a few months after Jason disappeared, the case had already gone beyond Luling. Local coverage stirred up a wave of online interest, and soon, the story was everywhere, from Facebook groups to Reddit threads. Speculation took off quickly. Some wondered if Jason had even been behind the wheel when the crash happened. Others floating theories about serial killers, targeting drivers across Texas. Popular true crime podcasts even linked Jason's case to a trend of young men disappearing near their vehicles. The sheriff's office, meanwhile, was bombarded with tips, questions, and requests, many of them from people convinced they had cracked the case. Amid all the noise, a seasoned criminologist named Rosmo joined the mix. He's a former cop turned academic, but he's still very much focused on tracking criminals. His passion isn't just about research. It's about solving real-world mysteries. Rosmo is known for developing a method called geographic profiling. It's a data-driven way to predict where suspects might live or where to focus a search. His model has helped solve serious crimes around the globe, but it's also been used in unexpected areas, from tracking disease outbreaks to helping search for the artist Banksy. Though based in San Marcos, Rosmo often consults internationally. He teaches lectures and preaches the value of logic over gut instinct. In his view, smart investigations are built on facts, not emotions. When the Caldwell County Sheriff's Office brought him in, he began building a geographic profile of the area. He visited Salt Flat Road, both during the day and in the middle of the night, trying to feel out what Jason might have experienced. At one point, he even tried walking the gravel barefoot, just to see if it was survivable. He barely made it 10 steps. While exploring one night, Rosmo came across a group of people near the crash site, like oil workers, although he wasn't sure. He asked about the area and whether lights would have been on in December. The response was tense. A woman told him to leave, and the vibe shifted quickly. Rosmo didn't think he was trespassing, so he left, but kept exploring. Later, while standing near a bridge, he saw a truck pull up quickly. The driver stopped, and when Rosmo walked up, he saw a shotgun pointed straight at him. It was a heated moment. Rosmo stood his ground, challenged the man verbally, and eventually, both of them called the police. Luckily, things de-escalated before it got worse. Soon after, Rosmo spoke with a local detective who identified the man as Stuart Carter, a landowner known for a few past incidents, including shooting 2 dogs, and, in a separate case, his own son during a family argument. Both incidents were considered legal under the circumstances. But they added a layer of unease. Carter told a different version of the encounter. He claimed Rosmo was belligerent and possibly drunk. Rosmo insisted the only thing he'd had that night was chocolate milk. The woman who warned Rosmo earlier was one of Carter's relatives. Carter denied pointing a gun, but the story remained contentious. Rosmo was asked to submit a written report of the incident. No charges were filed, but the situation left a lasting impression. That night, he felt like he got a taste of the area's attitude: unwelcoming, intense, and suspicious of outsiders. The encounter also led Rosmo to consider a darker possibility: that Jason, naked and confused, may have wandered onto someone's land and ended up getting shot, perhaps accidentally, or worse, intentionally. It was one theory, and it came with a heavy implication. Carter denied having any involvement in Jason's case, but when asked what might happen if someone saw a naked man on their land late at night, his response was blunt. Many people wouldn't take it well. Despite that theory, Rosmo eventually leaned toward a more scientific explanation: hypothermia. He proposed that after crashing, Jason, possibly hurt or high, walked barefoot in the cold and entered a hypothermic state. This might explain why he removed his clothes. There's a strange, well-documented phenomenon called paradoxical undressing. When the body reaches a critical point in hypothermia, blood rushes back into the limbs, creating a false sense of extreme heat. Victims suddenly feel like they're burning up and instinctively strip down. In many cases, that behavior is followed by what's known as terminal burrowing. It's a primal survival response, where people crawl into tight, sheltered places in a final effort to escape the cold. It's often where their bodies are found. If this is what happened to Jason, he might have crawled under brush or into a hidden spot after removing his clothes. Over time, wild animals like coyotes, vultures, or wild hogs could have scattered or consumed his remains, leaving little behind. But there are still doubts. That night, the air temperature stayed between 36 and 43 degrees, not frigid, but cold. Could hypothermia really set in that fast, especially in just over an hour? And would it be severe enough to cause stripping and hiding? Dr. Amy Grusecki, a forensic pathologist, weighed in. In her long career, she'd only seen paradoxical undressing a handful of times, usually in extreme cases, like the deadly 2021 Texas freeze. It's rare, but possible, especially under the right mix of conditions. Without a body, though, it's all theory. Hypothermia cases can vary wildly. Jason's drug use, any injuries, and the chilling wind could all factor in. Grusecki believed it was within the realm of possibility, but far from certain. By July 2021, Rosmo had wrapped up his profile. It was included in a public release of documents that also featured wildlife camera footage and a study on wild pig attacks. His conclusion: Jason probably died not far from where his clothes were found, and nature had scattered the remains. Over time, that became the most accepted theory among law enforcement. As weeks turned into months, and Jason still hadn't been found, many believed animals had gotten to him first, leaving behind almost nothing. But even that theory, like so many others in this case, has never fully closed the door. There's still no body, no proof, just fragments of possibilities and a family still waiting for answers. Chapter 5. What happened to Jason could happen to them. Not everyone agreed with the theory that wild hogs were to blame. In fact, some of the loudest pushback came from people who lived in the area, while outsiders were poring over maps and aerial footage. Locals were looking to the skies. They knew that if something or someone had died nearby, vultures would have been circling, but no one ever reported seeing those ominous birds over the crash site. Ranchers in the area were quick to point out that even when animals are attacked by scavengers, something is always left behind. A few feathers, some bones, evidence. But in Jason's case, there was nothing. To longtime residents, the idea that animals had completely erased him didn't sit right. Even seasoned investigators questioned the wild animal theory. One of them was Abel Pena, a retired FBI agent who had worked countless missing persons cases. He got interested in Jason's story early on because his daughter knew Jason through a friend. At first, he figured it would be a straightforward case, maybe a tragic accident or overdose. Initially, Pena thought Jason had probably wandered off and would turn up soon. Maybe he'd taken something, got disoriented, and died somewhere nearby.
In the meantime, tomorrow marks 2 years since Jason Landry vanished. He's the college student from Missouri City who went missing on his way home for Christmas. Tonight, we've learned the family is doubling the reward in his case to $20,000. Grace White has returned to the crash site near Luling. That's about 25 miles southeast of San Marcos. She joins us now with what she learned. Grace.
This case is a true mystery. Officially, the sheriff's office have said they have no evidence a crime occurred, but a retired FBI agent told us even after 2 years, it's too soon, he says, to jump to that conclusion.
We saw the tracks of the vehicle, which were kind of along this area here.
Abel Pena runs Project Absentis, a nonprofit that helps families find missing loved ones. Walking the crash scene with him, he offers a different take on the Jason Landry case.
You're not completely convinced that he was behind the wheel.
We're not certain of that as of yet.
Left keys in there and it's all locked up.
We've talked to folks that have come forward and have mentioned that there is a possibility that he may not have been driving that vehicle.
It was December 13th, 2020. Jason left his college apartment in San Marcos. Then, just after midnight,
did you find the driver?
I have not. I went up and down Salt Flat.
A volunteer firefighter calls 911 after stumbling upon Jason's car outside of Luling, and officers arrive.
Probably some college kid.
That's what I was thinking.
Jason's keys were found in the ignition, his wallet and backpack with a small amount of marijuana on the road.
I'll take this definitely because it's evidence.
But for Pena, Jason's clothes lying on the road looked staged.
I don't believe Jason exited his vehicle and removed his clothing that night.
Pena took us back to the intersection in Luling, where Jason's cell phone activity stops.
This area here is just a busy area. There's drug activity that takes place right behind us here.
He's conducted interviews with witnesses he claims could take the case in a new direction.
Do you think if Jason Landry was out here, he would have been found?
He would have been found a long time ago. I have no doubt he would have been found.
Just like taking one thing at a time, and with that mentality.
Pena passed his findings on to the Texas Attorney General's office. They have a cold case unit working the case. Tonight at 10, we'll have a look at what they found, and you will hear from Jason Landry's father about where he thinks police got it wrong. Mia.
Interested to learn more from Mr. Landry, Grace White. Tonight, thank you. And you can watch the entire interview with Jason Landry's father in the meantime on KHU 11 Plus, available on Roku and Fire TV.
That's what the early clues seemed to suggest. But the more time passed, the more curious Pena became. He also sensed that Jason was the kind of person people connected with easily. Friendly, open, the kind of guy who reminded parents of their own kids. That emotional pull helped keep the case in the spotlight. After giving law enforcement some space, Pena decided to step in and offer his help to the Landry family. He wasn't looking to take over, just hoping to collaborate and lend his expertise. With the right teamwork, he believed Jason would be found. Pena doesn't fit the image of a hardened agent. He's calm, soft-spoken, and looks more like someone you'd confide in than someone who's been on TV chasing fugitives. But his nonprofit, Project Absentis, specializes in cases just like Jason's, and it's made up of experienced former investigators who still have the drive to solve tough mysteries. Pena and his team weren't convinced. Jason had simply walked into the woods and vanished. Instead of focusing on the crash site, they turned their attention back to Luling, especially the moment. Jason passed through downtown without turning where he should have. His phone data showed that he was going a little too fast for that winding gravel road, around 35 to 40 miles per hour. For someone unfamiliar with the area, that alone raises questions. Was he running from something? What did he meet someone? For Pena, the real mystery began at a single intersection in downtown Luling. That missed turn and everything that happened afterward pointed to something bigger. After canvassing the area and speaking to locals, he started to suspect that the area was a hotspot for drug activity and that Jason may have stumbled into a dangerous situation. Pena even set up a tip line, and the information that came in painted a far darker version of events. One theory suggested Jason had been assaulted, forced to strip, and his car staged on Salt Flat Road. What happened after that is unclear. But if true, it points to something far more violent than an accident. Another member of Pena's team, a former Border Patrol officer named Stu Gary, brought his own expertise to the table. He specialized in tracking, looking for tiny clues in the landscape, to follow human movement. It's a skill, built for finding the unfindable. Gary scanned the crash site carefully, looking for any trace that a person had walked through the brush or left signs behind. The terrain was brutal, thick thorns, fences, tight spaces everywhere. If someone had walked through there, he believed he would have seen it. After finishing his sweep, Gary shared his findings with the Landry family and other searchers. His conclusion was simple. Aside from the search crews, there was no sign that anyone had been in that area at all. He also believed the scent dogs would have picked something up if Jason had ever passed through there. Pena continued sharing his team's findings with the sheriff's office. But over time, that relationship grew tense. As months went by, local law enforcement seemed to settle into one explanation, and they didn't seem interested in following up on anything that hinted at foul play. To Pena, it felt like they had given up too soon. He believed people in Luling knew more than they were letting on. But fear, he said, kept them silent. After all, if someone like Jason could disappear, who's to say it couldn't happen again? Chapter 6. This Isn't Human. In February 2022, the Texas Attorney General's Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit stepped into the Jason Landry investigation. Every year since, they've released public statements reaffirming their commitment, promising they hadn't stopped working the case. According to them, they've spent hundreds of hours chasing leads and talking to witnesses. In late 2023, they even pulled together a roundtable of experts and agencies to review every detail. Afterward, they concluded that they'd followed every legitimate lead possible. Officially, the case remains open. Despite all that, law enforcement still leans toward the wild hog theory. But Jason's parents, and many others, just don't buy it. Kent Landry finds it hard to believe that a group of pigs could completely destroy a human body, bones and all, in a short window before search teams got there. To him, blaming hogs sounds like a convenient excuse to stop digging deeper. Online, theories haven't slowed down. Some people still claim Jason faked his death and ran off to Mexico. Others throw out ideas about secret cults, bad drug deals, homeless sightings, or even aliens. As wild as some of them are, they reflect how little clarity there's been and how much trust has eroded. One man, Jim West, dove into the mystery after his daughter mentioned Jason. He had no background in missing persons cases, but he did love puzzles, and this one felt like something he could help solve. At first, he figured Jason was hit by a drunk driver, or maybe an oil worker's truck, and someone covered it up. But over time, his certainty faded. He started by hiring a drone operator to map the area, and followed that with months of combing through Jason's social media. Eventually, he even created a floating GPS tracker to see how far a body might drift in local waterways. West now leads a dedicated group. Of about 100 volunteers, he spent thousands on search gear, including an off-road vehicle. On recent searches, his crew formed lines to scour local ranches. Some carried pistols for protection, and many wore gear to guard against rattlesnakes and wary landowners. Even though West is the tactical brain behind the group, the heart of the operation is Cindy Lay. She's a dog sitter from Red Oak with a sharp sense of command and a booming presence. During searches, she keeps everyone moving and motivated with a handheld radio in hand. Her team is diverse. There's a PI in camo, a school teacher, a nurse, a former zookeeper, a retired police chief turned dog expert, and even a drag-performing member of a transgender couple. They all show up, united by a single goal: bring Jason home. During one search along a rocky ridge, someone called out they'd spotted bones. Everything stopped. At first glance, they looked like part of a human skull. Everyone held their breath. Lay took a quick look and knew better. It was turtle shell, not bone. After 3 years of searching, she's gotten good at telling the difference between animal remains and something more serious. Just to be sure, she snapped a photo and sent it to a forensic expert. Once that was cleared up, the team kept moving, eyes scanning the brush for anything: a bone, a shoe, a scrap of clothing. Nothing turned up. They wrapped up the search and drifted off again, empty-handed, but not defeated. Lay's connection to Jason began not long after he disappeared. One of her daughters was at Texas State, and she followed every update, every article. She even kept track of his church's prayer posts and searched his name daily. Jason felt familiar to her. She never reached out to his parents, but the bond she felt was real. She often cried thinking about his mom, picturing herself offering a comforting hug, one mother to another. Her interest deepened when she joined Facebook groups dedicated to Jason's case. What started as solitary worry turned into shared obsession. Thousands of others were right there with her, dissecting every piece of evidence, every photo, every theory. Some of the wilder ideas, like the rumor that a sheriff's deputy buried Jason in his own yard, came from locals who claimed insider knowledge. Those stories shook Lay. She began to realize how dark and complex the world could be. She wasn't the same person anymore. Now, She talks about Jason like he's part of her family. She knows the small details, his time at Christian camp, the instrument he played in high school, even how often he shaved before he disappeared. She could describe his hands, like someone who'd held them all his life. Her purse and wallet have Jason's missing person poster printed on them. When she meets new people, she hands them pens and coasters with his face. Her social media is filled with search photos, prayers, and hashtags like Warriors for Jason and Not Letting Up. What began as curiosity has become her mission. Out in the Texas brush, Leigh isn't just a suburban mom anymore. She's a force of nature, standing tall in a fight that's bigger than her. She's not letting go until there's an answer. Chapter 7. Like a little ballerina, I'd been working on this story for over 8 months when Leigh called me, clearly shaken. Something had been weighing on her, something personal, that had started messing with her day-to-day life. It wasn't directly about Jason, but about someone operating in the background of the Facebook groups, someone who seemed to know more than anyone else. It all began in late 2021. One night, long after her husband had gone to bed, Leigh got a strange Facebook message, curious. She took her phone and sat outside near the pool, staring at the message while listening to the hummingbirds in the background. The message came from someone named Cortland Smith, a blank profile picture and a name she'd never heard before. They wanted to help her solve Jason's case, but there were conditions. Leigh wouldn't know their real name, voice, or even gender. Everything had to stay secret. Smith claimed that secrecy was necessary because whoever was responsible for Jason's disappearance might actually be lurking in one of the Facebook groups. They also insisted that full honesty was the only way forward. Leigh could only respond yes or no. For Leigh, the decision wasn't hard. Smith already had a reputation in the groups for being sharp and well-informed. While most people spiraled into wild ideas or argued in the comments, Smith kept things organized and thoughtful. Their posts came with maps, theories, and questions that sparked meaningful conversation. Leigh was impressed. She even saved Smith's posts to review later, like notes for a study session. She couldn't believe someone that smart wanted to work directly with her. Smith told her she had what it took. She was grounded, observer, and driven. Before long, they were chatting every day, often into the night. The bond wasn't romantic, but it got personal, almost. On Friday nights, Leigh would sometimes head to her favorite Mexican spot alone. She'd order a margarita and message Smith, imagining them across the table. It felt like they were part of something together, something important. She once asked why Smith chose her, and Smith would always flip the question, telling her she was more capable than she gave herself credit for. But over time, things got weird. Smith had a controlling streak. They'd comment on her social media behavior, question her likes, and even send critical messages. That made her doubt herself. Leigh started calling it the punishment. When Smith would disappear for days or weeks after she didn't follow their lead. Sometimes, the tone of their messages got aggressive and manipulative. At one point, Smith even hinted they knew where Leigh lived. They also let slip that they were working privately with other women in the group. Leigh started feeling like Smith was playing them against each other. As their searches for Jason hit more dead ends, Leigh decided they needed a new approach. They had been using a geographic profile, built by a criminologist named Rosmo, a map that outlined likely areas where Jason's remains might be. But that map had been picked over countless times. So, Leigh started doing her own homework. She read Rosmo's research, bought his books, and dove deep into interviews and podcasts featuring him. One night, she watched a YouTube interview where the host thanked Rosmo for staying up until 1:30 a.m. for the chat. It seemed normal, but something about it stuck with her. She couldn't shake the feeling. What if Cortland Smith and Rosmo were the same person? It wasn't just the late-night messaging, the style, the theories, the attention to detail. It all felt too familiar. Leigh wondered if Rosmo had inserted himself anonymously into the Facebook groups to observe the public's theories up close. She picked up on small clues. Both Smith and Rosmo double-spaced after periods, something not many people still do. Smith once shared a podcast from British Columbia, where Rosmo had worked, and they misused a Texas expression, something a local probably wouldn't get wrong. Leigh also noticed how Smith seemed extra interested in her opinions of Rosmo, sometimes inserting himself into those conversations, like he was the man in question. During one heated moment, with a local woman who had cursed out the search team, Smith made a weird joke, asking if that woman was Rosmo's wife. Leigh remembered that moment vividly. Now, Smith and Rosmo didn't agree on everything. Smith thought the hog theory was nonsense and could be covering something darker. But Smith's knowledge of what happens when animals consume a human body lined up with what Rosmo might know from past cases. Another person had the same suspicion. Ash Martinez, a private investigator, also thought Smith was Rosmo. She started comparing writing styles and noticed patterns. Smith helped her on investigations, late at night, after her kids went to bed. Smith gave her advice on how to approach law enforcement and walked her through crafting reports. But Ash, too, noticed how manipulative Smith could be. After a disagreement, where Smith mocked her hearing impairment, Ash fired back and said she believed he was Rosmo. Smith denied it, but then softened, trying to patch things up. Later, Ash emailed Rosmo directly, praising his work. He professional respondedly, but didn't mention Jason's case. The next day, Smith sent a nearly identical message to hers. Ash found it funny. It felt like a quiet admission. To test her theory, she fed hundreds of Smith's messages into ChatGPT and asked it to analyze the tone and language. The AI flagged Smith's academic tone, use of forensic jargon, and logical structuring. It suggested Smith was likely a criminologist or professor. When Leigh told Jim West about her suspicions, he wasn't convinced. He didn't see why someone with Rosmo's credentials would bother with a Facebook group full of amateurs. I wasn't sure either, until Leigh showed me something interesting. It happened right after I had dinner with Rosmo in South Austin. We chatted about the case and about Leigh. He said her name sounded familiar, but downplayed his involvement, saying the case was just one of many. He seemed casual, even ordered a cookie and chocolate milk before we left. I had told Leigh I'd be meeting with him, and although she hadn't mentioned Smith to me at that point, she had told Smith about me weeks earlier. But right after I left Rosmo, Leigh got a message from Smith. He asked, "When did you last speak to Peter?" Leigh teased back, saying, "You keep me on my toes." Smith replied, "Like a little ballerina." Chapter 8. I want to be careful, but I'm pretty sure I didn't speak to her. Rosmo often tells a story about the Monaco Grand Prix, one of Formula One's most dangerous races, held in a glamorous coastal city with tight turns and steep drops. It leaves almost no room for error. Back in 1950, Argentine driver Juan Manuel Fangio hit the brakes before a blind corner, something drivers never did, and it ended up saving him from a massive crash. At the time, he didn't understand why he did it. Later, he realized his subconscious had picked up on something his conscious mind didn't. Normally, spectators looked down at the drivers, but that day, they were facing the other way, watching the wreck further down the track. That tiny visual cue made Fangio react instinctively to Rosmo. That's what intuition is. Not magic, not a gut feeling, but the result of being immersed in a consistent environment long enough to spot patterns. He believes you can't rely on intuition in chaotic settings like the stock market, but in stable ones like police work, it can be helpful as long as it doesn't override the facts. Leigh had spent months wondering whether her gut feeling about Rosmo being the same person as Cortland Smith was valid. Maybe she'd cracked some secret pattern. Or maybe she was falling into the exact trap investigators are warned about, letting instincts take over. Still, part of her felt like she'd just used what she'd been taught. She was trained to think this way. But why would a well-respected criminologist pose as someone else online? Maybe it was for research, maybe to track tips, or maybe he got pulled in like everyone else, caught up in the social media rabbit hole he'd warned students about. The thought nagged at me. After a year of reporting, talking to experts, combing through files, going on searches, watching Facebook group theories spiral, I started losing sleep. What had begun as work started feeling personal. I looked forward to the searches, got caught up in theories, and started to wonder if I'd crossed a line into obsession myself. For a long time, Leigh was scared I'd tell Rosmo what she suspected, but eventually, she embraced the feeling. She even created a desktop folder titled F.U. Cortland, filled with videos on healing from manipulation. It helped her regain some control. I met up with Rosmo again at our usual South Austin cafe. We chatted about his classes and my progress on the story. When I brought up that people online suspected he was secretly Cortland Smith, his reaction was surprise. He said he'd never heard of the name until I mentioned it and found the whole idea kind of amusing. I asked if he wanted me to help shut down the rumor. He just smiled and said to leave it. No one would believe me anyway. Then, when I mentioned Ash Martinez, he hesitated. He said he didn't think he'd ever spoken to her, though he wasn't completely sure. Sometimes, he replied quickly to message it and forgot about them. I hadn't even said her name until then. So, his caution caught my attention. The conversation moved on. He spoke about how public involvement in crimes can be really helpful, especially with social media, where tips often come from regular people. Many of them, retired parents, hobbyists, night owls, have the time and energy to dig into these mysteries. He also pointed out that if the public is watching closely, criminals might be too. Police have been known to watch funerals, thinking suspects might show up. Some agencies have even bugged grave sites, hoping killers would return. In the weeks that followed, Rosmo stuck to his position. He was not Cortland Smith. He dismissed any writing style comparisons, called other so-called evidence flimsy. When we last spoke, he said people are often drawn to high-profile crimes because they want to feel connected to something bigger. And the internet only makes that pull stronger. It's something he probably understands well. He's spent years chasing elusive criminals and doesn't give up easily. He told me once, he's never been someone who does things halfway. And in that way, he's not much different from everyone still trying to find out what happened to Jason, Abel Pina, Cindy Leigh, Jim West, Ash Martinez, me, the volunteer searchers, online sleuths, and yes, even Cortland Smith. On Cortland's Facebook page, alongside a photo of a desert rock formation, there's one image with just 2 words, never quit. Chapter 9, Come Home Someday. By now, Jason Landry would probably have a college degree, maybe even a job he enjoyed, and someone special in his life. He might joke about the weird days and of being stuck at home during the pandemic, his room filled with smoke and dreams, and chalk it up to wild college memories, like most of us eventually do. But instead, he's frozen in time, remembered mostly for a short chapter of his life during lockdown. His friend Jack remembers him as more than that. Someone who loved music, video games, and tossing a frisbee around on a sunny afternoon. He imagines Jason could have ended up in the music scene or designing games. On the internet, Jason's story is often treated like a riddle, a fascinating tragedy that invites speculation more than reflection. But for his family, it's a slow, unrelenting nightmare. His dad, Kent, has heard all kinds of well-meaning phrases. He'll come back, or he's out there. But after so many years, those words feel hollow. He's a kind and patient man, but even he admits it's hard to stay composed when people offer hope without understanding the pain. It's been almost 5 years, and he still knows the exact number of days since Jason disappeared. At first, the family clung to the idea that Jason might still be alive somewhere. But now, that hope has shifted. They believe he's gone, but they also believe he's at peace. When Kent imagines his son, he doesn't see the confusion or the cold of that final night. He sees him happy again, his smile back, safe, in a better place. What they want now is something, anything, to bury. A part of Jason, to bring some kind of closure. They've already prepared a gravesite overlooking the Colorado River, a quiet hill where they can go to remember him. But even that won't bring him back. Only time will. Until then, they keep waiting. His photo still stands on a weather-worn reward poster just off a twisting road in Caldwell County, the same road in where Jason vanished. One winter night, others have traveled it since, but none quite like him. Jason Landry was more than a missing person poster. He was a son, a friend, a dreamer, a college kid navigating young adulthood in a world that suddenly shut down. He was goofy. He wore SpongeBob socks. He rolled joints and talked about enlightenment. He made people laugh, and he made people feel seen. But one cold night, in a quiet corner of Texas, he vanished. And in his place, we were left with questions, theories, rumors, maps, silences. For nearly 5 years, volunteers have walked dusty roads, crawled through brush, studied satellite images, and argued in Facebook threads, not because they were obsessed with mystery, but because they believe Jason deserves more than to be forgotten. The truth may still be out there. Maybe it's buried. Maybe it's been erased. Maybe it's hiding in the memories of someone too afraid to speak. But the truth always leaves traces. If you know something, anything, about Jason Landry's disappearance, now is the time to come forward. Not for the reward, not for the attention, but for the family, who still visits a gravesite with no body, who still whispers his name every day, who still sets a place in their hearts for someone who didn't get to come home. Because this isn't just a mystery, it's a human life. And somewhere, someone knows something. This has been the story of Jason Landry. Thank you for listening.